what's going on everybody, Gus here. So the last phones I reviewed from Motorola's One family of devices were squarely in that space of delivering good enough, at least, experience and performance for a entry-level price and the usual caveats and compromises, right? So what about this time? What about the G9 Plus? Well, this is the most powerful one in the G9 family of devices, but I mean, what's the strategy here? What gives? Since it's not using top-tier chips with a Snapdragon 730G inside of this thing and 662 on the other phones from the G9 family, what other features have they tinkered with to try and make this thing more compelling? Well, from Motorola's own marketing material, there are 4 things here: the cameras, the performance, the battery, and the storage. And since they put a lot of energy and pride in hyping up these cameras, why not go through them first, right? Well, this thing is sporting a quad camera setup with a 64 megapixel main sensor at 79 degrees and f1.8 aperture, an 8 megapixel ultrawide at 118 degrees and f2.2 aperture, a 2 megapixel depth sensor at 87 degrees and f2.2 aperture again, and the usual suspect for most of these multi-camera setups for low-end tier phones, a 2 megapixel macro camera at 83 degrees coming in again at f2.2 aperture. And I'm not going to harp too much on the cameras because the ultra-wide is nice to have. The depth camera is probably helping with focus and doing stuff like portrait mode. That's okay. And the macro is kind of fun to use, but it has too little detail, and since everything ends up being really soft, use cases are fairly limited even if your creativity to use it isn't. But the bigger disappointment is definitely the 64 megapixel main shooter. That, yeah, the number 64 megapixels like sounds great, but the fact is it does not really create images with that much more detail, and it messes up in exposure, sharpness, and especially color and temperature balance way too often, making this basically just another entry-level camera. As in, it's good that it's here, it's better than not having a camera at all, but by no means is this a reason to buy this phone over anything else on the price range. Now, onto the rest of the specs, the Plus brings a nice overall package, either in rose gold or indigo blue, which is this color, and I think it looks really nice. The back is plastic and slightly rounded, so the grip is pretty good, and it's not too slippery. And the display itself is also flat, which should help with accidental touches, but this is one hell of a big phone. It's just as wide as an iPhone 12 Pro Max, but it's even taller. So if you have smaller hands, yeah, one-handed operation of this thing is not going to be a breeze. Back to the back of the phone, it's not the biggest of camera bumps ever, but it's definitely table rocking. There is a SIM/SD card tray on the left side, right above the Google Assistant button. Volume buttons on the right side, right above the power button, which also doubles as a fingerprint scanner. And honestly, this, in my opinion, is the best approach because, yeah, in-display fingerprint scanners look cool, but I'd rather have one on the power button. So give me Face ID plus a power button with a fingerprint scanner on it that's more reliable, and I'm a happy guy. Oh, and you can also double tap the power button to pull up customizable Android shortcuts, which is nothing new really, but a nice touch to add functionality without cluttering your home screens. Double microphones for better voice isolation, a 3.5mm jack on the top, single bottom firing speaker. Unfortunately, the earpiece does not pull double duty as a second speaker, and it does get loud, but it obviously suffers from lack of low end, and beyond 70% volume, everything starts crashing up a bit. There's a USB Type-C port for charging on the bottom and a hole punch selfie camera on the left upper side of the display that can be used for face unlock, but as you guys definitely already know by now, it's not the most secure of biometric face authentication lock thingies, so if that's a concern of yours, just keep it in mind. This thing has a 5000 mAh battery inside with a 30-watt fast charger in the box, which is nice, and the overall battery performance is really good. The battery life on this thing is pretty nice. There's no wireless charging here even with the plastic back, but this thing will definitely with ease last you at least the entire day with some to spare. This is definitely not an area you should worry about. The display itself is a 6.8-inch 1080p FHD plus HDR10 IPS one that is not as bright as I expected it to be, but it looks pretty nice. It's got good colors and basically no shift aside from the blacks that get a little bit washed out when you're looking at it like from an off angle, but other than that, looks pretty good. Oh, doesn't have a high refresh rate if that's something that you're looking for. Not really sure if you should be looking for a high refresh rate around this price range, but I mean, doesn't have it. And connectivity wise, pretty much the only thing this doesn't have is 5G. And the box comes with a cable to go with that charger, a 3.5mm pair of wired earbuds. Do not expect great things here. A SIM ejector tool and a transparent silicone case. And it's still rocking Android 10 with no clue if it'll ever get Android 11, let alone Android 12. And the Snapdragon 730G inside of this thing is no slouch. It's definitely capable of delivering a good experience, a smooth experience, but only when accompanied by stronger teammates. Which is why with only 4 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of not particularly speedy storage, this actually does feel like more of a mid to entry level phone, and that gets me kind of worried for the other phones in the G9 family, because it seems like Motorola has spent a lot of time differentiating the Plus from the other ones, and it's definitely the better one amongst the bunch, but it also feels like Motorola is thinking that any potential customers that would maybe be interested in the G9 Plus are not going to compare it to anything outside of Motorola's own offerings, which is obviously not the case. I mean, the G9 Power, which has a 6,000 mAh battery, since it's less power hungry actually, could be a compelling option for someone who'd think, yeah, maybe it's a better one-day, full-day phone, or maybe even a two-day phone. But since it's pretty crippled with less 4G bands, with no NFC, with a lesser charger, with a worse display, and not even having an ultra-wide camera, you basically have it crippled. Yes, it is less expensive, but comparing the two, the G9 Plus is obviously the better candidate, but neither of them exist in a vacuum. There are plenty of options from $250 to $350, and even if most of them don't have any standout features that would say, yeah, that's why that phone is better than the rest, the G9 Plus also doesn't have anything like that, which means that when it's all said and done and potential customers have already weighed out all the options between this thing and the competition, it's probably going to fall to what? Aesthetics or maybe brand affinity? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but if I was in Motorola's shoes, I would definitely not wait or bet on one of those two things being the reason why someone would choose my phone over something else. So to go back to those four main, strengths of the G9 Plus, the camera, the performance, the storage, and the battery, for the price range, you really don't have that much to complain about. Because if you look at the storage, I mean, it's nothing really to write home about. It's not particularly fast storage, and 128 gigs is becoming more and more, commonplace now. Commonplace may be a stronger word, but it's sort of becoming a standard. You find a bunch of stuff at 128 gigs out there. Plus you have expandable storage, so you could go for something else with 64 gigs and add in through an SD card, for example. When you talk about battery life, let's be frank, nowadays to really set yourself aside in the battery department, you need to either deliver full day battery usage or maybe even 2 days with super high-end performance, or go the other way around, and since you don't have high-end performance, deliver mind-boggling long-lasting battery life, like 3, 4, maybe 5 days, I don't know, something ridiculous. None of which is the case here. And when it comes to the performance, sure, the 730G does deliver what it's capable of with 4 gigs of RAM, and it's not the best performance ever that even it could deliver, but you can find other phones that have more performance to give around the same price range, even if they are going to have other compromises. It's just a matter of, for the customer, weighing which of these options do you rather have. But the real big one, at least for me, is the cameras, because you have options here. A quad setup like this delivers options, means that you get a jack of all trades, which usually means master of none, but you guys overhyped what it could deliver. As it stands, the cameras on the G9 Plus are basically as good as most other entry-level cameras. And honestly, that's how the G9 Plus sort of paints itself in this area of the market. For the money, it's yet another pretty good option. You're definitely not going to be throwing away your cash if you go for it, even if it doesn't have anything that sets it, aside from everything else, all that much. And that's been it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, so share it and check out these other ones that might be of interest to you as well. All the links are as usual down below, but if I missed anything, let me know in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching. This is Gus, and I'll catch you guys later.